some around the NFL may have called this a correction week. A lot of favorites won, and a lot of rookies got a little bit of a harsh reality check. We'll go over all that. And the NFC East, not the best showing, but our special guest tonight may get a little bit of a break cut for him with everyone else's woeful performance. Wrapping up week 6 and looking ahead to Monday night on Sunday Scaries with Buccs McGee. Welcome in to week 6 Sunday Scaries with Bucks McGee post-game show. As you can tell, Bucks McGee is still recovering from the effects of Hurricane Millen. He's okay. Power is back. Internet not so much. So we bring in, again, calling up from the reserves, Greg from the Breaking It Downs podcast. Greg, I see you rocking the Giants gear, but the red may be furrowing out of your eyes a little bit.
Yeah, the blood's starting to boil as the Giants have 0 points at halftime. It seems like every primetime game since LT was playing, it's the same story. So D's playing well, starting to get angry. Let's see how it goes.
Well, speaking of angry, I think this week you could probably chalk up a lot of this year's crop of rookies with some ire and some angst, because now you're one familiar with the betting scene in around the NFL. Some people may have called this a correction week. All the chaos we've seen through 5 weeks in the NFL, and in this one we saw a lot of favorites win. So before we get into the nitty gritty, what's your kind of overall interpretation of this Sunday with the favorites doing well and not so much of the
that's a pretty accurate synopsis. I mean, most of the favorites did win. Most won pretty handily. The exception was Philly made that one a lot closer than it probably should have been because Cleveland is still god awful. But other than that, yeah, you're pretty much right. If you're looking for upsets at entertainment from that perspective, it was probably the blandest week per se, just from that angle. Yeah, because most of the favorites did hold serve.
A week for people in their survivors pool to wipe the sweat from their brow and have a stress-free weekend.
Well, I had Philly, so they made me angry enough to be like, "Are you kidding me?" I don't know if you saw they got a field goal attempt blocked for a touchdown the other way at the end of the first half to tie it up. So yeah, they kept it. I mean, it was a tie game until 6 minutes left. So yeah, they at least did enough to piss me off and give me a scare. Yeah. I didn't hate them enough. Yeah. That was their way of giving me the middle finger for picking them.
So, what we've seen a lot in the NFL this season is a lot of the rookies playing immediately, and there's been, I guess, generally good things out of that crop. Not so much this week. So we'll go down the list. The Patriots not having to put it mildly, the fondest season thus far. They finally made the change, pulled Jacoby Brissett. Drake Maye goes in, and Drake Maye, Houston Texans looked like the Houston Texans we expect them to, and they kind of gave Drake Maye a swift reality check. What was kind of your reaction to Drake Maye's performance and the Texans kind of getting back to looking like the Texans?
Actually, if I'm a Pats fan, I come away from that game feeling pretty good because yes, he made a few mistakes, and I don't think anyone expected New England to win that game. But he also did make a couple big plays in the game. So he showed you a little resiliency. He didn't crumble when they had an early turnover. He didn't crumble at all. Made some big plays in the passing game. Actually moved the offense at time. It's going to make rookie mistakes. It's going to happen. So in actuality, from the Patriots' perspective, I think you've come out of that feeling pretty good. They don't have any false illusions that they're better than Houston. I thought May move the offense, gave them some excitement. It was a good start, actually. Take it from that perspective. Not the better team, not the better weaponry, and they at least scored some points and moved the ball. So pretty decent performance, I thought, actually.
And as far as obviously the Patriots not only transitioning from Belichick and with a new rookie quarterback, there's a lot of problems elsewhere on the team. So, what is kind of the areas of need for the Patriots to address in order for Drake Maye to have at least some silver lining before the season's done?
I would say the whole roster. On a serious note, the D is actually decent, even though they're missing pieces. The D is not horrendous. The problem the D's run into is they're on the field too much because the offense is not. So number one, the offensive line for New England's arguably bottom three in the entire league. Skill position players, they have some young kids, but if you look at their receivers per se, you would probably rank them, if not the bottom, same thing, bottom three in the entire league. Decent running backs, but even Ramondre Stevenson, he got benched for part of last week. He had fumbled 4 straight weeks. So I mean, on the offensive end, they don't have the talent, the weaponry. That's just flat out. So the D is still respectable, but on the offensive end, they need a lot of work, and they're not unlike any other football team. If you can't block, you're not going to win. They weren't great with Andrews, the center. They lost him for the season. So problem number one is offensive line. Even Brissett, when he was in, I don't think he played that poorly. Just he has no protection whatsoever. You can't do anything without that. So that's where their problems start, right up front. Bingo, offensive line.
You definitely have to wonder who has the worst offensive line, whether it's the Patriots, the Bears, or the Jets.
I honestly think too. I think it's the Patriots, and I understand the rationale to wait a couple of weeks as they did with Drake Maye to start him, just because not only are they not great to begin with, but to throw him out there week one, at least they've had a few weeks to try and figure it out as best as possible. So I understand the approach the Pats took. I thought it was a pretty sound approach, to be honest. And at least May now gives them some enthusiasm. He's mobile enough that he can make some plays on the run, but that will be an issue protecting him and keeping him in one piece. That's not a question.
Are you confident in what Houston did in this one to say, like, all right, they got the kinks worked out, they're ready to roll? Or do you just chalk it up to, let's give it another week because at the end of the day, they were playing Patriots, rebuilding?
I mean, they gave up more points than expected, but I got to chalk some of that up just to the game. When you have a big lead like that, New England's able to play. It's a road win. A road win in the NFL is a win, convincing win. I'd take nothing more than, Will Anderson had a big game. They have still the pass rush. We know the offense can do some things. They put up 40, I believe it was 40, 41, I think they put, without Nico Collins. So, yeah, I'm coming out of the game at Houston. Listen, a road win is a win. That's it. Took care of business. Get out, move on to next week. They're fine. They're in good shape.
What's been your thought as far as before this game, as far as why Houston's kind of been a little bit slow to get back to the Houston that they left off at from last year?
Well, I don't really. I mean, if you look at last week or last year, excuse me, they had a lot of very close wins. So yes, they put together a great end of the year. It's not like they were blowing teams out all of last year either, right? So they're still a young team. Stroud's still learning. We know he has talent. They have talent. But honestly, I didn't expect them to go 13-4 here either. I mean, mind you, they are 5-1 now, I think. I don't think they're that good. But I mean, to be quite honest, I don't look at anything they've done as disappointing. They're a good team with a lot of room for growth still. So however you chalk it up, sure, they can improve, but 5-1 after 6 weeks, right? It's a bottom line business. They're in first place, still ahead of it. So they look like they're going to coast to that division right now. So yeah, they have time. They'll get better.
Yeah. The next closest threat is my Colts at 3-3, which is a minor miracle in of itself that we are there. We are 3-3, so not too much for the Texans to sweat about.
Probably not, but good on Joe Flacco again. Guy's still slinging it.
Yeah, somehow defying gravity, Mother Nature, Father Time, all of the above. Next rookie up is Spencer Rattler, someone we spoke about the previous time, and I don't know if maybe as if he didn't already have enough juice in him for starting his first NFL game. He probably had even more juice with the Cox almost pulling the upset against Bama on Saturday. So this one, I mean, okay, the game started off. Tampa got out to a big lead. Saints hung around. They stormed back. They took the lead, and then all of a sudden the wheels came off in the fourth quarter, and the Bucks ran away with it. What's your kind of tough luck love for Spencer Rattler in his debut.
I mean, quite frankly, I think Rattler. Yeah, there were some mistakes made to be expected, but the offense. I forgot what the final score was. They were in the 20s, correct?
Yeah,
I know.
51 to 27.
Yeah. So you know what? Put it this way: they were in a big hole early. He moved the ball. They got the ball down the field, and quite frankly, you scored 27 points at home. That's a game you probably should win most of the time. They had too many turnovers. The D got gashed. Tampa went up and down the field on them. Some bad turnovers that weren't all Rattler's fault. A couple fumbles. So, I mean, the way I take it, listen, you got 27 points. I know one of them was a special teams, but nonetheless, that's still 20 points on the offense. Moved the ball, came back. I think it was a decent performance, right? He can't account for them giving up 50. So, yeah, that was a good job, actually. I'd come away there feeling.
Yeah, so something Buccs McGee noted earlier in the year was how better Chris Godwin is in the slot versus out wide. And he obviously had a big performance in this one against the Saints. What kind of you went over the last time we met up about how good Baker's been, how efficient he's been. What's kind of like the Saints still had, despite the offensive struggles this season, even before this one, they still kind of had a decent unit on defense. So what went right, what went wrong as far as Tampa's attack, picking that apart?
I think exactly just touched you that I was bouncing back and forth in games. There was one play in the game. He might have come up short, but they wound up converting. Baker got out of about 4 tackles. It was a third down play. It was an awesome play. He scrambled. He got away from 4 different tackles. Came up, I think, just shy of. He just has control of that offense right now. They've clicked. They have good synergy. And bringing on Godwin. Godwin just looks a lot healthier. It seems like he has an extra burst in his step this year. That was clearly evident today. He had a big game. He had 2 touchdowns early. I think it's as much. Sometimes game. Talk about game script. The game became a shootout, right? And New Orleans, quite frankly, didn't have many answers on defense for Baker Mayfield. So I think it's both. I think New Orleans obviously could have been better on D, but I'm going to put a lot of that on Baker Mayfield and the Bucs and Bucky Irving, who we brought up last week too. He had some big time burst plays for them, and they're going to be a problem. Like I think Tampa, I think people are underlooking them as far as like they are a threat. Like that team can score. They almost won at Detroit in a playoff game last year. There's no reason they're probably going to win that division, and they could make some noise. Yeah, I'm going to put that as much on Tampa as anything.
Yeah. Do you think? Let's say because Derek Carr hasn't exactly been everything the Saints thought they were going to get when they signed him. If there's like any remote caution to his injury, do you think the Saints kind of like hush this and be like, let's just play Spencer out the rest of the season?
I don't think so. I mean, unless the old Wally Pip, what they call it, when he took over for unless there's that it is an oblique injury, and anybody who's ever had something similar, like you just don't know that's one movement can flare that back up. So it's a tricky injury. So hence they're going to give him time, but I don't think they're at a point unless Spencer Rattler pulled off some ungodly performance over the time while Derek Carr's out, which I don't see happening. So I think they're just going to make sure Derek Carr gets healthy. But it is a good, call it, litmus test for Rattler to kind of get his feet wet in the NFL. They get a picture of, do they think it's something they can work with? And I don't think off of week 1, not a bad performance. Again, I don't think they're ready to make a judgment that he's their next guy or anything to that level. But was he functional at the position? Sure. But I think Derek, when he comes back, will be the quarterback.
Was even if he does come back, was this kind of the veil is off for the Saints and they're kind of revealed as the overpaid, a little older team that probably shouldn't be contending, but they had just happened to be playing above their heads? Is this kind of like the veil's off?
I kind of viewed them myself. I mean, obviously they had a great start. We talked about last week that they could have won 2 of those games. They could have been 5-1. Today was a bad one. In my opinion, I feel like the Saints kind of are what we thought they were. They were who
they thought they were.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they'd probably be around the 500-ish team. They're not great. They're not horrible. They're, I think, 3-4 right now, correct? That's, If I would have pegged a record before the season, I would have probably said 9-8 or 8-9. So they kind of are what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not horrible, but do I think they're anything close to a contender per se? No, I do not. Could they fight for a playoff spot? Sure.
Next up, a little bit of a surprise. Bo Nix the last couple weeks. Denver didn't have any expectations coming in, and they didn't look great when it started, but they happened to win a gritty, ugly game against the Jets, and then they blew out the Raiders, if I'm not mistaken, last week. So this one, I'm thinking, all right, Bo Nix, show us something. Beat the Chargers. The Chargers have been ravaged with injuries and uh, lost a kind of lot of addition by subtraction or subtraction by addition or just subtraction in general in the off season. So you think like, okay, they're at home and maybe they could spank the Chargers now. And sure enough, the Chargers, I think they got out to a 23-0 lead before Denver decided to come back on them and fall short at the end there. So what's kind of your welcome to the NFL moment for Bo Nix here?
Well, that's it. I don't remember if it was a pick six. He threw a pick early in the game. I don't remember if the Chargers took it all the way back. He put them in the hole. I mean, flat out, he did. I think it was 3-0 Chargers at the point. And exactly as you just alluded to, welcome to the NFL. Chargers, a good defense. I thought going in, this was not going to be a good matchup for Denver. Denver had gotten by because their defense has been very good. It actually was decent again today. But they were going to need to put up some points. And Harbaugh-type teams, they're going to be physical. They're going to be strong. This was one of those, you got a lot of work to do. So, yes, he made some plays later in the game. I saw a couple plays with his feet, got out of, and that's part of the reason he's the starting quarterback. So he can make plays out of the pocket. He can elongate plays. But this is exactly the game. You're like, welcome to the NFL, rookie. It's to be expected. Yeah, like there's nothing. Nix has shown some good qualities. Even in the Jet game, when they won that game, he threw for 60 yards. So. I don't think they expect him to be gunslinging left and right, but you're going to have those moments. That they all have them, and I think that was today. Went up against a good defense, put them in a hole early. He's not the first nor the last that's going to do that. So
yeah. And I don't necessarily think it had a big effect on the game, but and I'm not sure off the top of my head when exactly in the game it happened, but obviously Jim Harbaugh left the game with a little arithmetic flutter. So maybe the Chargers also had a bit of win it for the Gipper energy in them when their coach left.
Yeah, I think sure to a degree. I just think the Chargers are a better team, definitely better overall balanced team than Denver, and I think that played out.
So that was my next question. I mean, do you buy the Chargers because they didn't have a lot of expectations going in other than just a new voice in the locker room and obviously a more competent voice than the last guy. I mean, do you buy high on the Chargers because they've been they started out hot and then got a little inconsistent?
I'll start off with like Brandon Staley the last few years of the Chargers. I mean, he made decisions that were just ridiculous. I mean, honestly, like going for it on fourth and 5 at their own third, there was no consistency. So that number one, you're going to have a huge upgrade. So I think what the Chargers are, I think it's legit as far as they're probably a playoff team. They're going to be in the mix. So I think that's legit. But I think they're kind of the team that is, how would I put it? They have a high floor, but a low ceiling. So they can definitely make the playoffs. But they've turned Herbert. I don't say turned him into it. And I understand. I mean, Herbert was chucking the ball 55 times a game last year. Last 2 years, look where that got him. It got him hurt. They got into game situations they didn't want to be in, too many turnovers. Harbaugh has changed that. But I think the weaponry, come, let's say when they have to face Baltimore, they have to face KC later. I don't think their ceiling's that high. So they're not going to be able to get by winning the type of game they beat against Denver today. So I think it's legit. But I do not think on the same token they're a championship contender. I think they probably will make a playoff spot and hit their ceiling. But, they basically have a complete new receiving core. And I don't think come January, February, you'll beat the big boys with the weapons. But I think they're legit, though. I think they're a tough physical team. They're not going to be easy for anyone to play. Far better coached. So I probably a team probably looks at 10, 11 wins and probably a playoff spot. But yeah, if they listen, we knew
be a pretty good turnaround off of last year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is legit. But you get my point too. I don't think once they get to that, they're not going to have the weaponry to go up against a KC or a Baltimore later in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's how I see it.
Well, our next rookie is Jayden Daniels, but before we get to that, uh, based on what you've seen out of Bo Nix, is he the second best rookie in this class from 6 games
No,
in?
no, I don't think so at all. No, I think Bo Nix is. I'm not, quite frankly. I mean, he has done okay. I'm not saying he won't be. I'm not the hugest Bo Nix fan. I think he's got potential. I saw a lot in college that he had moments that scratching your head. I'm not sold on him. I definitely think when we talk about Jayden, Caleb Williams, and all said and done, will be a much better, and who had a big day today. No, I don't think Nix is in the caliber of Caleb Williams personally. No, especially from a throwing perspective. Nix creates a lot out of the pocket, but when teams scheme up on him, as will happen, how does he make those adjustments? Right, and Caleb athletically is just, yeah, he's far more gifted. So I think Nix, when all is said and done, will probably be. I'd probably say fourth amongst the kids right now. I think Drake Maye long term will. So I think Nix. I'm not saying will be bad, but I'm not buying he's. I hear the Drew Brees comparisons. Well, I need to see a lot more before I'm ready to go there. So again, they've won their games with defense, and as I said, take that Jet game, they won with 60 yards passing offense. So they didn't win because of this.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And then the other one, of course, Jayden Daniels, who's been stellar this season, had a little. I don't necessarily want to say it was a welcome to the NFL moment because they were in the game, but it was more of a welcome back to reality moment. Like, okay, the shine maybe is off. You play a real team. You play a potential Super Bowl contender, one that okay they got to a slow start, but now they're getting to their groove. And Baltimore said, "Hold tight, rookie. This is still our time, not your turn yet."
Yeah, you know what? I don't think. I mean, I'll actually give Daniels a little credit in this one. I mean, Baltimore's a better team, so that's not a shock to anybody. Baltimore's D did play better, but I'll give Jayden credit when they were down 14 and it looked like the game was up. One. But basically, Washington was in a score. The game was over at that point. He did drive them down the field. Another touchdown to McLaurin. So I think Jayden actually played pretty well in the loss. So I mean, they were in the game. Baltimore's one of the best teams in the NFL. They had it within one possession in the fourth quarter, right? So the offense moved the ball. No, he didn't put up the gaudy numbers, but that's not going to happen every week. We know that. He's not going to throw 80% completion percentage, and it's just not. And Baltimore definitely seemed they got some pressure on him. That Baltimore seemed to shore things up on their end defensively. So I would take nothing negative. As much as I hate Washington and wish there was bad to report, I objectively, I can't really do that. I just think they went up against a better team on the road, represented well, to be honest. I think the final score they lost by 7-10, but yeah, kind of to be expected, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't play horrible. I don't even think if he had. I don't remember the Bucks. I don't know if he had a turnover, so he's still doing a good job. Yeah.
Yeah, and what has been bad for Washington this year is the defense, and Baltimore's has not been great either. So, what's your breakdown of both units in this one? Because I mean, they gave up a decent amount of points, but neither one of them really got lit up. So, what was kind of your reaction to how each defense played in this one
Well,
against
we talked.
against two mobile quarterbacks?
I think we talked last week about if for Baltimore, it's like just play to the game script. Teams are able to run the ball in Washington. And that played out today. What Baltimore was able to control the clock for a lot of it, have long, sustained drives. I do think the defense did play better for Baltimore. They got a pass rush. I was in and out of games, but I did see a number of times, which Daniels was great at. I mean, he's very hard to tackle. They did create a lot of pressure, which obviously disrupted some of the passing plays. They didn't have time to, I know I'd said last week, as of the third or fourth week, Baltimore had the most big passing plays given up in the league. The pressure alone disrupted a lot of those attempts. So I think Baltimore definitely, I'm going to give them the credit. Their defense looked like it started to figure things out a little bit. Not perfect by any means, but much better than they had been. So yeah, again, we don't. At least I don't expect Baltimore's pass defense, to be what it was the first 3 weeks. I don't see it. So that was a good job by Baltimore. Yeah. And Washington didn't play horribly.
Yeah. One of my YouTube friends hopping on right now. Craft Brew Reviews. You just missed our Denver segment. So, You'll have to go, Eddie. You'll have to go back and catch that one after.
Yes.
But it's not all it's not all negative. We've kind of been building up. Jayden Daniels still lost, but overall played well. There was one rookie quarterback that did come out with the W, and that, of course, is the aforementioned Caleb Williams over in London. He had a spot of tea, and the only one that won. But then again, he did play the Jaguars, and you should win when you play the Jaguars.
Yeah, I thought he played next to the game because they also the first two drives they went 3 and out. So I think at the end of the first quarter they still didn't have a point on the board. Obviously he turned things around. I think he had 4 touchdowns on the game, and even though it was against I pounded against the Jags, that performance against your Colts even in a win, they're horrible. Yeah. So listen, Caleb, and something else too. He had a couple plays with a Dunze, so like it feels like they got a Dunze more mixed into the offense. I think you have to come out of that game feeling great about Chicago, which I don't know how. Towards game time this morning, I had to double check to make sure, is Caleb Williams out of this game? It had swung to the Jaguars being a favorite. And I remember joking to my wife saying, are the odds makers drunk? Like if they watched, I mean, the Jacksonville's been horrible. So Williams did do a great job. Just quick on this is interesting. So the safety, Andre Cisco of Jacksonville, he basically flat out said that they quit, and he didn't absolve himself of that. So he said the defense in the second half completely quit. They are a mess, total mess.
And on top of that, Peterson, of all people, now the head coach is the one responsible for maintaining the culture of a locker room. Peterson even said the culture is gone here. So I think Monday's going to come around, and we're going to probably see another head coaching change.
Listen, maybe people don't want to go to London anymore. It might be 2 weeks in a row. I'm not somebody who calls for, I'm not overreactionary, calling for coaches' heads, etc. But this is bad. I mean, do you remember I said last week, forget only like the record, the body language? I remember saying that to you. That's it. Like that tells you when you see a team like that's the Eagles at the end of last year. If you're like that, especially in football, you're done. I mean, I don't see how Peterson survives this, quite frankly, because barring a drastic turnaround, which I cannot see happening, they have talent, but that team's a mess. Lawrence is regressing. You have guys quitting. The defense is a complete sieve. And good on Williams. Hey, he took advantage of the situation. So great job by him. Yeah, so Doug Peterson might be coach as many NFL teams as me by the end of the week. I'm not really sure. But actually, they're staying in staying in London. So if they're logically going to do it, they'll probably, because they're going to stay out there, probably have him coach next week. I would think next week might be his job on the line. And the owner has said, which take it with a grain of salt, that this is the most talented group I've ever had. Sure, maybe he's sipping the Kool-Aid too, putting a little vodka in it as well, but that team's a mess. But yeah, getting back to Caleb though, that's his job. He did a great job today. And yeah, same thing. Made plays out of the pocket, carved them up in the passing game, 4 TDs. Yeah. Not more you can expect from that.
And they're staying in London to play the Patriots in the next one. So if he's really lost the locker room and they drop another one to New England, then it's really, really bad.
Oh yeah. I actually think the way they've looked, even a I don't mean they need to beat New England by 30, but if this is a 16-13 boring home win where the offense doesn't do much, I think he's in serious trouble. I do. And again, I'm not the one who cries for that, but they're bad. They're really bad. And when your players are telling the media that they quit, I don't know how you recover from that.
No holds bar.
That means they don't believe in the coaching staff. That's a clear sign of that.
Yeah, and back to Caleb, you mentioned before, as far as like comparing him to Bo Nix, Caleb can move around and make things happen a little bit more, but he's getting a lot of practice at that with how bad the Bears' offensive line is. So, kind of is the inconsistencies that have kind of followed the Caleb conversation this year. Are they such because of Caleb's play, or are they such just because the Bears have a a relatively good core of guys, but the heart of the line of scrimmage is not that great.
I think it's twofold in the sense that, without saying everything, I have watched a number of their games. I haven't seen every snap. You're going to have inconsistency with a new quarterback, right? Flat out. Certain plays where I did see, I forgot what game it was. Williams kind of broke the protection himself. So, think of it schematically for an offensive line. You're trying to create a pocket. If the QB gets out of the pocket too quick, he gets happy feet. That's kind of it exposes the offensive line. It's not what they. So I think it's the whole. I think they will get better. They looked better today as a unit. Figuring out the game against Houston. Houston blitzed an inordinate amount. It was figuring that out. That's not only in the line. That's running backs picking up the blitz. I think it's figuring everything out together as a new unit, which they have a ton of new pieces. I think you'll see that Bears offense, the line, everything get better, continue to improve as the season goes on. I think you got a glimpse of that today. A lot of potential there, no doubt about it.
Last point on this game, just from the comments section. And he says, I say Jags Pats is going to be a tie. That would be crazy. This would be the one thing that might be more insulting than a loss over in London before he loses his job.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for the Brits. Jeez. I mean, I hope they're drinking a lot of Smithwick's before this game, boy. This is not. I mean, unless you're a rabid fan, and you're excited to see Drake Maye play, which again he was entertaining. I think the talent is still there for Trevor Lawrence, and I'm going to put this more on the team, the coaching staff. But as far as these two teams on the field right now, you'd have to put them in two of the bottom three in the league. So, yeah.
Well, your Drake Maye point may be correct because we've seen the fans over there, and maybe this is just the Brady effect of the last 20 years. But there are some Patriot fans out there, so maybe they are. Well, maybe they will be excited for Drake Maye.
One thing I have to give credit to the London fans today. This was hilarious. Did you see how many guys were dressed up as Mike Ditka? It was awesome. Like, it made me laugh. They were Mike Ditka, like, in the full getups. There were so many of them. I'm like, that's pretty cool being in London. So good for them. Looked like they had fun.
Now you're smiling, you're feeling good. So I guess we have to bring the conversation down a little bit with your New York Football Giants. Here they did just tie it up, but this is not exactly the game that you thought the Giants were going to be coming in against this another sieve of a defense, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, I'll tell you what, the fact that Danny Dimes had avoided the turnover bug, he threw an awful pick. He basically should have just went down one play off. You saw it. They would have gotten a field goal out of the drive. The offense has struggled, no doubt. Just not consistent. They get a 58-yard play towards the end of the half with Slayton, Andrew Thomas's legal man downfield. They just haven't had any consistency. But defense has been excellent, minus that Burrow run. The D-line has caused pressures. I mean, they almost – I think they had 3 sacks in the first half. They almost got 3 more. So the D's kept them in it, and that is kind of what I expected. I thought the G-men would play okay in this game. I did think we'd move the ball better, which we have not. But that D-line is legit. Like, our D-line can play. Burns has blown up a couple plays. Ojolari, they've played excellent. So I'm not surprised by that. But I know the Bengals fantasy darlings. The Bengals aren't a great overall squad. They have talent, but yeah.
Yeah, if the worst thing you've given up is a play where Joe Burrow just wheels out and just nobody was paying attention to him, but otherwise you bottled Chase up and he's been locked down the whole time. Not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you have to pick your poison. Nobody expected Burrow to go trotting down like he's, Walter Payton down there. But the point being, that happens. And if I'm not gonna look at one play. The fact is, they held him to 7 points at the half. So. They're giving the offense an excellent shot to win this game. So, I think that's where the G-men will be representative all year, is because that's where the football game starts. Any level, their D-line can play. They're legit.
Do you think Danny Dimes still has the agita from primetime games, or is he kind of over that?
He doesn't seem like a kid that, like him or hate him. He doesn't seem to get overly rattled. Period. So I don't think it's that. just the offense on a whole. There's been no cohesion. He missed on the Giants O-line, which has been a little better, was not great in the first half. There's a play to Wan'Dale Robinson, which Wan'Dale had cooked the second. It probably would have been a 30, 40-yard gain. Not a great throw, but he was also hit right as he threw. So, yeah, they've struggled as a unit. Tracy, the running backs, looks good. But, yeah, unfortunately, offense, it's you don't know what you're going to get on most weeks with the G-men, unfortunately. So
yeah, Tracy unfortunately cost me a fantasy game, and another one's digging the hole a little deeper for Buffalo's defense to come back from on Monday. So, yeah, he's not my favorite guy right now.
Tracy can play though; he's a good little athlete. He was a receiver
Yeah.
for almost his whole career at Purdue, and then switched over to running back. So I like Tracy; he can make some plays. Yeah, he's going to be a weapon for them.
That's funny because he looks more like a running back. I heard that at the top of the game, but he looks more like a running back.
Well,
So I'm surprised
I'm sure
he wasn't.
I'm sure over the last 2 years, he changed his training regimen, right? Like you're going to bulk up, you're going to get bigger. So I'm assuming. I remember him at Purdue. I don't remember, but just logically, right? You have to build your body differently to be a running back, unless you're a third down scat back, which he's proving to be more than that. He led the NFL in rushing last week, surprisingly enough.
Yeah, not everyone's going to be Darren Sproles.
Yeah, so. No, but I do like. I think he's going to be a valuable playmaker for the Giants. I do. Yeah, I like what I've seen so far.
Well, to clear up some mixed emotions on the G-Men's performance this week, you can dry your eyes a bit on, despite a spirited effort from Washington, still a loss. And then the other two combatants in the NFC East. We'll start with Philly. They did win, but they barely got out of this one. And the Browns, as we've touched on numerous times, both with you the last time and Bucks McGee and I have torn apart Deshaun Watson many a time. The Eagles probably should have won this one by a lot more than 4 points.
Again, I sound like I'm on a theme I'm usually not on, but the Eagles, this is under Sirianni right now. I know he got them the Super Bowl, and I give credit, but I think this is a good example of what they are in the sense that they should be better. Granted, there was kind of a fluke play that blocked field goal, but the point being, you still should have. They had 10 points against the Browns. Again, I know the Browns have Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. They have some decent players, but they're a mess. Their offense, which played better, I thought Philly's D was actually pretty terrible in the game. Cleveland drove right down the field, and as per Cleveland's what they are, they get a full start, 2 offensive line penalties inside the 5. They then settle for a field goal. Honestly, I thought it was a pretty trash performance, to be honest. They won, great, but if that's the best you're going to have against the Browns team, that's pretty god awful. I wouldn't feel too good about that for Philly. That's not because I hate them, which I do, but even I expected like a more convincing victory than that. With they got Brown back, they got Smith back. Smith did make a big play late in the game. Brown did as well to salt it, but. Yeah, I did not have a good feel to it. If you're a Philly backer, did not.
To that point, I mean, you can't really make the case to fire somebody off of a win. But how long is Sirianni's leash? Because I feel like the Philly fanatics have been clamoring at his job for a while now.
I don't think it's long at all. If they go on if I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be in year because they have enough talent. Like I used today as an example, they should win games. So I don't know if you'll see it, but if they're an early out, if they don't make the playoffs and early out, I get the feeling that they're itching to make a change. I'm not buying. When we talked about in the offseason that Jalen Hurts himself, for them to say to the media, and Hurts doesn't seem like a bad kid. He's not, a bad mouther type. But he admitted, there were some issues on the offense. Like there were. I don't think he has a lot of strong backing within the organization right now. So I think anything less than a pretty successful season, probably involving a playoff win or two, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go. Because you just watch the product sometime, and we talked about someone like the Patriots who don't have the physical talent. The Eagles do, and just they're. You would think of it this way: a coaching staff should bring out and accentuate the strengths of a team, they have a ton of talent. They're better than their performance most weeks. So I think he's in trouble. I don't know if it's in season, probably not, unless again they go on a tank job towards the middle end of the year. But I'm going to guess they have a new head coach by next year. Put it that way.
Similar to the how long is the leash argument. How much of when do you kind of the benefit of the doubt excuse expire for Jalen Hurts with his constantly changing head coaches versus it's like, okay, Jalen, you got to figure it out now.
Well, I think Jalen's been all right, and even last year, like that flame out, their line was worse than we talked about Pickett. The line at the end of the year with Kelsey still couldn't do a thing. I mean, Kelsey had no time to pass. They were an absolute mess. He was basically running for his life most play. You remember the playoff game against Tampa? And Tampa destroyed them. It looked like the 85 Bears on defense in that game. So, but on the flip side, though, if at this point in his career, they've obviously invested a lot of resources in Jalen Hurts. If you get to the end of this year and he's regressed as opposed to progress further, I mean, that's as big a telling a sign as anything. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but if this is the type of performance you're going to see the Eagles this year, where it's 14-10 over Cleveland, whatever the final was, I think that's as big a factor as any. Is that if the quarterback is not progressing, that will be the downfall of Sirianni. And again, I think he's played okay. As much as I'll say for the 58th time, I hate them. I'm not going to put it on Hurts. I think their issues are far more than that. I think Hurts is good enough to win. Not perfect, but good enough to win.
Well, that one was a little bit bittersweet because even though they played awful, they still won. But this one will most surely make you grin from ear to ear.
Oh, I know where you're going here.
The Dallas Cowboys, historically, we know they do not play well at home. And that was probably magnified by 1,000 a few times over in this one. Kind of expected. Defense has been awful. Detroit comes in with a very powerful offense. Everyone knows it. And the end result was extremely, extremely expected.
Yeah, it was amazing actually. That's my perspective on it. Being objective here, Dallas. We talked about it last week how they went to the Pittsburgh game and they were out without Lawrence, without Micah Parsons. It was going to come. The Lions were off a bye, ton of weaponry, so this was going to be a bad spot for Dallas to begin with. But that was a beating. They had 47 points. If Detroit kept the first unit in, Hendon Hooker was in the last two drives. I mean, the point is they called off the dogs with 13 minutes left. They literally could have put up 60. So I mean, it was a beating. And I know I was watching on Red Zone, but what I didn't see enough of is Jerry Jones' reaction, because I know he was having a mental breakdown. There's no doubt in my mind. So, but that's a bad one. Optics do matter. Again, it's a loss. Detroit's one of the best teams in the league. So whether I will say that, whether it's 47-9 or it's 12-9 or you get it, it's a loss. But the optics weren't good, and they matter to Jerry Jones. That was ugly. That was a beating. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not.
I think it was a bad. Every team goes through this when you're injured. Time in the schedule. This was a game because of those factors. They were going to be up against it, no doubt about it. To play the Lions without, Parsons and Lawrence, it's a problem. So I don't want to make too much of it because I wish Dallas, lost their next 10 games. I don't see that. I think this is one of them for them. Burn the tape. Everybody played poorly, right? And sometimes that's the easier approach. Yeah. I mean, I hope they make some rash decisions and do something stupid, but again, you faced a really good team. You're not healthy. They're off a bye. It happens.
I know Micah Parsons is a difference maker type
absolutely
player,
he is.
But at the same time, this defense was awful against the run last season. The secondary was very big play or bust. So, I don't know if the injuries are that big of an excuse for them.
Okay, in an individual game, listen. I don't care who you are. Micah Parsons is that much of a difference maker, and I mean he wrecks game plans. Some of the big plays Dallas will roll off, Detroit rolled off. If he's in Goff's face on a couple of those, he really is that much of a difference maker. Take the two of them out. But on the same token, I don't think their D is great either on a whole. So, I mean, they got completely gashed in that playoff loss to Green Bay. So coming into this year, like what really changed? But I will say, with Parsons out though, it is a big deal. He gives it. He has a talent level that just 99% of the league does not have. Right? I'm never going to put him there, but I heard someone say, he has that kind of LT-like effect in the sense that coaches will have to you have to account for him in a game plan. So it's going to change some of what you do when you have to worry about a player like that. But they took a beating. No, so I don't think they're great. I think Dallas is same old. They're a decent team. They have talent, obviously. But every year, Dallas is going to listen. I didn't see Dallas as 9-8, 10-7 myself. It's not horrible, but did we really think Dallas? I know you hear it, and it's the media darlings and blah, blah, blah. But I think that's what they are. Not much of a running game, so. And I know we talked about they needed balance. Well, you can't have balance in a game that you're down 30 right off the bat. So, and sometimes, so as much as I hope it continues, I can't honestly say that. It's one of those games. You took the beating, get to the woodshed, throw it out, and get back at it next week. Like I said, I hope it continues, but I wouldn't count on that.
America's game of the week, America's embarrassment of the week.
I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think it was their worst. I think it was their worst home loss like since the 80s. I was reveling in all the negative stats about them. Like, this is amazing. Put it this way, they were taking such a beating. And you heard there were like a smattering of Detroit for kind of because the Dallas fans left. I actually forgot at some point they're in Dallas. It just because honestly, that's how bad the beating was.
Well, when I see a bad Cowboys loss, I almost never forget they're in Dallas because that's when they play as poorly as they do, when they're at home, which is just mind-boggling. They spent all this money on that new building, and that's when they're at the worst, when they've got the friendly confines and this beautiful arena, and it's just like.
Yeah, but and I wish this was a harbinger of things to come. Any sport, any level, sometimes you have games like that. It doesn't matter how good you are. Nothing works. You get out coached, you get outplayed, that's what happened to me, really. So I wish they could play Detroit every week. Won't happen. Yeah, I'm not gonna. The old saying on a serious note, you don't want to judge a team off for its best win. They had an amazing win in Pittsburgh last week. You don't want to judge them off their worst loss, which is going to be this week. They're somewhere in the middle. I think that's what they are. Is
Detroit? I don't want to say like, are they back? Because they still they've been playing well the whole season, just not necessarily as well. But between the Seattle game and this one, I'm like, this is the Lions. This is the Lions that everyone's like, okay, revenge tour from the championship game, Super Bowl or bust. Let's go.
Well, they're loaded. I mean, there's make no mistake about it. And I talked about this a lot this year, but because I think people were discounting this. This is the first year they're getting Jameson Williams healthy. Jameson Williams you add that to that talent, that's huge. He broke a big one today. He's a game changer. You're adding that to what was an offense that was excellent without him last year. They're completely legit. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, in the game though, this is going to be fed. Their offensive line is as good, maybe the best in the league. Goff needs to be good, not great, but on the other end, it looks like Hutchinson's probably out for the year. I'm sure you heard about that. He already had emergency surgery. I can't imagine he's back this year. It's a compound fracture of his leg, and that's an issue. Detroit's deep. Yeah. Has some talent, but you don't just replace him. I mean, you could make a valid argument he's the best pass rusher, or top 3 in the league, no doubt right now. That's a big loss. I don't know how they account for that.
Yeah, I mean, as well as this game went for them, that's obviously the bitter pill to swallow as it ends. Is you're by far your best defensive player, if not your best player overall. That's likely missed the season. That's not good.
No, I mean, one of those things you hope you're wrong,
but few players will affect the game like
when a guy has emergency surgery when it's week 6. Any type of break, I don't see how. I mean, maybe 12 weeks from now, play up, but its point is, I mean, they are good enough, especially on the offense. I mean, now you're probably going to have the offense carry a little more. I don't think they're going to become the worst defense in the league, but there's no team in the league that can lose a guy like Hutchinson and be better off for it. No. So, yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, I was talking to one of my Lions friends, who's a Lions fan today, texting during it, and he was like, he made a joke. He goes, "Man," he goes, "I might go buy out the liquor store right now." Point being, he's making a joke, but it's like, oh, this is bad. They know it. Yeah.
Little off topic, but you'll appreciate this comment. The Bucks are like Tony Soprano.
Bucks are legit. I mean, they really are, though. Like, and I think it's a maturation of a quarterback, and sometimes the synergy of the game plan seems to work for him. That happens. He's not the first nor the last quarterback, that it takes them a while to be in a system that is productive, good for them, players good for I think they found that. Yeah, so I think the Bucks are a factor, and we're talking about. I picked Detroit to go to the Super Bowl this year. This definitely puts a hit on that. You can put Tampa in that mix. I think Tampa has a legit shot to. Yeah, they threw that one stinker up against Denver. That happens. I mean, that happens to anyone. And Denver's defense is decent, so take that aside. That's the outlier, right?
Nothing like an injury to open up the floodgates to more competition.
And even with Tampa, I don't think it was Detroit's best day, but Tampa has already won at Detroit on the year. So, I think the last few years it's more of, they're playing the NFC South, which is arguably the weakest division. Yeah, sure. But you got to start realizing they're actually a good team. Like, doesn't matter what division they are. Yeah, and Godwin, we talked about earlier, looks completely refreshed. They have weapons. They have a lot. The defense has been nowhere near healthy, by the way. So that if that starts to happen, they get guys back. That's even more so in the tank for them.
Before we wrap up the show, we'll touch on the Monday nighter, Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets. And I feel like this is one that Buffalo, please rebound from the last couple of weeks and put the nail in the coffin of the Jets.
I'm actually on the flip side of this. I actually kind of expect a decent performance out of the Jets. I saw today they're going to get C.J. Mosley back. Buffalo's passing offense has struggled. Their new receiving core, they look good the first few weeks. It hasn't the last few. They've struggled. I think if you look at some of like the advanced stats on this stuff, they have some of the least separation, the receivers do, from corners. The Jets defense even the London game, they were down 70-0. They kept them in the game. And they played almost lights out the rest of the game. I think the Jets is a good spot for them. I don't think they're as bad as what we've seen this year. I actually think the Jets are going to win this game. I do. I try to remind myself that team's not as good as you're better. They're not as bad as the offense is going to be better than that. Put it that way. I don't see Rodgers throwing free picks again.
So you think Robert Saleh was just that bad for that team that firing him is going to flip on a switch? And considering the fact that Aaron Rodgers' best friend, Nathaniel Hackett, also got demoted from play calling duties in this firing.
I'm trying not to. I know it sounds odd. I'm not trying to go too much into the Rodgers. I heard him on Pat McAfee, and he seemed pretty genuine about this. You could tell he felt really bad, and he was right. He said the fact of the matter remains. He was kind of saying, like, I don't expect to play that poorly again, but he said if I play a better game, we win that game. Robert probably still has his job. So I do agree the offense looked off. I want some tape of some of their blocking schemes, their run game. They needed to change up something offensively. So I'm not killing Saleh. Saleh, according to most sources, stayed out of the offense. So, which I think that's a good coaching move. When you're in a head coach, you have to give up some of the X's and O stuff to your coordinators. So, did Saleh, did he hesitate too long to change, to look to make some change on the offensive side? Like you heard that he might have, before he got fired, he might have looked into demoting, changing the play calling. Maybe he waited too long on that because their offense should be better than what it's been. So I just think sometimes there's, a change is necessary, but I don't think the Jets are as bad. The coaching change at this point might have been an overreaction, but I'm just going back to the talent level the Jets have. They have some talent there. Yeah. I don't see them going 6-11, put it that way.
I mean, Saleh is not an offensive guy, so I mean,
No,
how
I
dare
mean
you? He
he
should
never
have been
pretended.
nowhere near the offense.
No, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was. So yeah, I mean, a part of head coaching though is, I think part of the opinion was that Saleh's very likable. I'm not saying it's true or not. Obviously, not in the locker room, not in the front office, but you hear rumblings that maybe he's too nice per se. Like didn't make changes quick enough, didn't lay into people who needed to. I don't know that, but I don't think Saleh. Do I think he did a great job? Well, your record is what it is. Bill Parcells said that, right?
Mhm.
He's not had a good record. I don't think it's all his fault. Zach Wilson was the QB last year. That was a disaster. But I just think the Jets, they have talent there. That's not a question. I don't see Rodgers throwing three picks again this week. I do not. The Jets defense has played decent against everybody they've played. I think you'll see more of the same. So I actually think the Jets win tomorrow. That's my 2 cents.
And that might be a little bit of revenge because my last point on this is the fact that maybe there's a little bit of post-traumatic stress for the Jets in this one, or at least for Aaron Rodgers, because the Bills are the team that ended his season after a mere 4 plays last year. So,
Well, it's funny. He actually cleared the first hurdle though, because when they played San Fran the opener, talk about irony, it was actually Leonard Floyd, who's now with San Fran, who he made the sack that busted his Achilles. So he already got through that. He's played against Floyd. He got through the fourth play, but obviously that changed their season, and that didn't help Robert Saleh actually. They're not having nearly as bad a season if Rodgers had been there. So
yeah. Who need between the two of them? Who needs a win more out of this game? Is it the Jets or is it the Bills?
it's the Jets. I'm not even looking into the hoopla, the media stuff. No, just flat out. The Jets are 2-3. This is a division game. They dropped this. Buffalo's 2 games ahead in the division. Again, there's tiebreakers division. If the Jets win this, they're tied atop with Buffalo. So just from a pure numbers perspective, it's definitely the Jets. I mean, it's a home game. Yeah. So definitely Jets. Pressure on them, but I think you'll see, sometimes there's a little rejuvenation, extra little juice with the, I'm expecting a good performance. They are the Jets, but yeah, I think it's the Jets who needs the game more though. Yes.
Interesting comment from Private Ross here. A little Bills adjacent. Before OJ died, he predicted San Fran to the Super Bowl.
Well, well, yeah, I guess he can't predict this year, but
No.
no, no.
Until this week. So maybe it
Yeah.
just takes us 6 weeks in to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, not to harp on, but I don't really take the words of OJ too seriously, regardless of what he's had to say in the last 30 years. So, but we don't want to go there.
Well, Greg from the Breaking It Downs podcast, thank you for filling in for Bucks McGee again. Hopefully, barring the internet gods, he will be back next week off of the Hurricane Milton damage. So, Greg, thank you again for filling in, and take us off air with your final thoughts of Week 6.
I think final thoughts were just you did see somewhat of a regression to the norm. Some of the better teams have created some distance. And the Dallas Cowboys got absolutely annihilated. So I may get angry. I may get happy at the end of my Giants game here, but I will have somewhat of a smile on my face. So Dallas is not going to win the Super Bowl. That's my take. And I could have told you that in the preseason, but I'm sure of it.